ahead, Mike.
I asked her about like the bloodmobile and like the photosynthesis video. She only remembers the bloodmobile.
Oh, really? All right. So the endocrine system is a collection of things that we call glands that produce chemicals called hormones and basically send them into our blood. They circulate around in our blood and they affect our body in different ways. So that's what the endocrine system is, a system of glands that produces these chemicals we call hormones. The actual words, the name itself, endo means inside, and that root crene means secretions. And this is a word that we use, like something is secreted by a gland. It means it's produced, it's released by the gland. That's what the word secrete means. So these hormones are these very small proteins, basically, that are produced in our glands, and they circulate around in our blood. And they have effects on different tissues, depending on which hormone it is. The word hormone means to excite. Because these chemicals that float around in our blood, they cause changes in our body, cause things to happen. We'll talk about specific hormones, specific endocrine glands in a few minutes. But generally, these hormones are produced at certain times, and whether or not the hormones are being produced, it's controlled by something that we call a feedback system. A feedback system is a system in which conditions are kind of monitored and constantly adjusted depending on what's needed. That's what a feedback system is. And so we have systems inside of our body that turn glands on or off depending on the situation. And we'll talk about a thermostat in a minute and how it's similar. Overall, the purpose of these endocrine glands is to help our body to maintain what we call homeostasis, maintain balance, maintain stability. Our bodies only really work well within a pretty narrow range of possible conditions. And so our endocrine system helps make sure things stay within those conditions. So one way to think about how endocrine glands work and how these feedback systems work is to imagine like a thermostat. So, and I changed this a little bit so your arrows may be a little off. But, this is a thermostat for our room. In your house, somewhere on the wall, you have a thermostat. You probably know where it is. Probably your parents tell you don't touch the thermostat because they don't want you to jack the heat up, right? So, what is the purpose of a thermostat? Raise your hand if you could tell me, like, what does it do? Ava?
The temperature of your house.
Yeah, it controls the temperature of your house. Your thermostat has a thermometer, that's where the name comes from, built in, that keeps track of the temperature of the room. Okay? So let's say the thermostat is set at 70 degrees. Okay? So this thermostat in our room here is monitoring the temperature of the room. Let's say the temperature of the room drops and gets down to 68 or 67. The thermostat is monitoring that. Okay? And then what does it do if it senses the temperature has dropped? Grace? Raise what up?
Temperature?
Yeah, raise the temperature. How does it do that? Does heat start pouring out of this thing?
No.
The thermostat itself, does it heat up the room?
No.
Now, what does it actually do, Brandon?
It like sends a message to like heaters throughout the house to produce more heat.
Yeah, exactly. In this room, what happens when this thermostat senses the temperatures drop below its setting? It's connected by wires through the ceiling to the heater in the back of the room. And when it senses the temperature's dropped, it sends a signal to the heater telling it to do what? Turn on. And the heater turns on. And so the heater turns on, and what happens in the room?
That's hot.
It gets warm. That's what a heater does. So as the temperature in the room starts rising, and it gets to 70, what does the thermostat do at that point? Brianna? Yeah, it says, okay, we're at the proper temperature. Sends another signal telling the heater to turn off. And then it continues monitoring the temperature. Eventually the temperature in the room will fall again, and this whole process will repeat. So this is what we call a feedback system. The thermostat is keeping track of the temperature and then making adjustments. But it itself is not changing the temperature of the room. It's sending a message to other things, to the heater in the back of the room. And that's how endocrine glands work as well. Endocrine glands within our body are monitoring certain conditions, like our blood sugar, for example. When they sense that the conditions are not at the right level, they send a message in the form of a hormone. That causes a change, brings conditions back into balance, and then the endocrine gland can shut off. So it's the same kind of system as our thermostat. Our endocrine glands produce these chemicals we call hormones, send them into the blood, where they circulate around throughout the entire body and cause changes in different parts of our body. They regulate conditions. So we'll talk about some examples of some endocrine glands. We're not going to talk about all of them. We're certainly not going to talk about all the different hormones because there's a lot of them. They get pretty complex sometimes. We'll just talk about some of the basics to give you some examples to understand. So one really important endocrine gland is actually found in your brain. It's called the pituitary gland. And it's sort of in here at the base of your brain. It's really small. And it acts as sometimes a master gland. It produces hormones which affect other endocrine glands. Kind of is the boss of the other endocrine glands. It's only like the size of a pea. It's really important. So it produces all sorts of different hormones. We won't get into the details, but we will talk about one. It's probably a hormone maybe you've heard of before. It's called HGH, or human growth hormone. This is a hormone that's produced in our pituitary gland. And for you guys right now, probably many of you, your pituitary gland is producing a large amount of human growth hormone. My pituitary gland is not producing a lot of human growth hormone. Why? I'm already grown. I'm my full height. You guys are still growing. And so the way this works is that throughout various points in your life, your pituitary gland sort of kicks on and produces a higher level of human growth hormone. That hormone goes from your brain, your pituitary gland, circulates through your blood. When this hormone gets to your bone tissue, it's a signal to your bones telling them to do what? Grow. And so your bones start to grow and you get taller. Okay, so sometimes you have those growth spurts when in a few months, maybe you grow an inch or 2 inches. Those are times in your life as you're growing when your pituitary gland is producing a higher level of this hormone. And then it shuts off. Sometimes it goes through stages and grows certain times, more certain times, less certain times. And then eventually it shuts off and produces a lower level and you stop growing. So that's what human growth hormone does. Regulates our growth. There are some times when there are problems with a person's production of human growth hormone. Some people are born and they have a deficiency. their pituitary gland does not produce these higher levels of growth hormone at certain times, and they don't grow to a normal height. We call that dwarfism. And a person does not grow to a normal height. They grow and mature in other ways, but not in terms of their height. Okay, here's a couple examples. People affected by dwarfism. The opposite problem also happens. In some people, their pituitary gland produces an excess of growth hormone. That leads to gigantism, it's called. Okay. We'll watch a video about this gentleman. This is the tallest person ever documented. Robert Wadlow is his name. He grew to a height of 8 feet 11 inches. Okay. And the issue with his pituitary gland is he had a small tumor on his pituitary gland, a growth. And what happened is it caused his pituitary gland to constantly produce an elevated level of growth hormone. So from the time he was born, he grew he didn't go through growth spurts, he just grew and grew and grew. He never stopped growing until the time that he died. Okay? His pituitary gland always was producing this human growth hormone, so he grew to this height of 8 feet 11 inches. Here's another person that was affected by pituitary gigantism. Anyone know his name? That's Andre the Giant. He's a wrestler, WWF wrestler. I used to watch him when I was a kid. I think I saw him at the Odd when I was a kid. But he had, this guy is 6, I think this person is 6'2". This is Andre the Giant. He had also a tumor on his pituitary gland that caused him to grow to an abnormal height. I don't know his exact height. I'll have to look that one up.
7'5".
I'm not sure. Do you know that, or are you just guessing?
By how he looks, he says he's
Yeah, I would say
he
probably upper 7s, maybe 8
Yeah.
feet almost. I'll look it up and let you know. Kiara? Really? Yeah, that's really tall. Here is another person. This is, I believe, the tallest person currently alive, next to the shortest person currently alive. Okay, where you have dwarfism and gigantism. This is Robert Wadlow. So this is, his parents were just normal height. This is his father. This is him, Robert Wadlow, 8 feet 11. And so this is a model of him at the Guinness Book of World Record Museum. It's Mr. Arcuri standing next to it. So he's really, really tall. And that presents some problems. Being that tall, it's hard on a person's heart. It's hard on their joints. And so Robert Wadlow actually had to wear braces on his legs to support his height. His joints couldn't support all of his body. And at one point he got a wound from one of these braces that got infected, and eventually that infection spread throughout his body. That's how he died. But he never stopped growing until he died.
Did
So
he
that-
ever play basketball?
No, he was very, generally, I mean, not always, but like he was not very coordinated. He had to wear a size 40 shoe.
No.
And so being that size, it's very, very difficult to be coordinated and able to really participate well in athletics. Obviously, Andre the Giant did. Some basketball players do at that extreme height. So it just sort of depends on an individual. Jordan?
What about Shaquille O'Neal?
Yeah, in the video they'll talk, he was much taller than Shaquille O'Neal, but I don't know that those basketball players that are 7 feet tall are affected by a pituitary disorder. They could just be really, that's about the limits of height. Is that?
I knew Yao Ming was like 7'2",
Yeah.
but Pascal Chapu, he's like 7'3".
Oh yeah, and there's like Michael Reeves, I think. That was maybe, he was another really tall basketball player. All right, so this is a little video just about Robert Wadlow, so you can see a little bit about him. It's kind of interesting, especially when they show him with his classmates, because he's with his classmates and he is just towering over them.
How old is he?
There are certain items in the Guinness book that can only be classified as classic Guinness.
How old is he in this?
Robert Wallow Jr. is
For a while
definitely a
ago,
classic.
he died a long
Although he
time.
died in 1940, Robert's record has
Are we done
never
with
been
notes?
broken. Let's take a look back at the world's tallest man. He was just under 9 feet tall, 8 feet 11 and 1/10 inches, nearly 2 feet taller than NBA All-Star center Shaquille O'Neal is today. And the world could barely accommodate him.
2 feet taller than Shaq.
Doorways, no room on a bus, no room on a train, no seats, airplane. Everything was made for a person 6 foot or under, maybe 9 foot.
Robert Wallow, tallest man ever, born 1918, Alton, Illinois. As his average-sized parents watched in awe, it didn't take long for Robert Wallow to grow up and up and up. By age 5, he was already 5 feet 4. By 10, he was 6'5" and towered over his teachers.
I went in there to teach, and I still don't remember a single thing I taught, because when Robert walked in there and sat down with those great big old feet sticking out, I kept looking at him, and he got out his paper, and he put it on the desk. It was a regular notebook-sized paper. He put that great big hand on top to start writing, and I couldn't see the paper anymore.
Robert longed to be
These
normal.
kids are his age.
Except for his size, he was. He even joined the Boy Scouts.
Just a regular boy, like any other boy, only larger. His mischievousness was just like any other. He'd take your hat and put it up in chandeliers where you couldn't get a hold of it.
He probably wished that he was as tall as he was and wanted a normal life, which he couldn't possibly live.
When he was 12, doctors found he had an overactive pituitary gland, the source of human growth hormones. Corrective surgery was dangerous and not sure to work, so his parents let nature take its course.
I remember I was about 12 years old and weighed 240 pounds and I'm wet, about 7 feet tall. These boys look around.
That's your age. 7 feet tall.
Same age as I am, they go to the same grade.
2 years later, when he entered high school, he was 7'5" and used to being teased.
And he always took it so well. But in spite of everything, his ears would turn red and he would chuckle and he was terribly embarrassed. But I never did see him appear angry.
His size made him too awkward to play basketball. He had circulation problems in his huge feet and was sometimes ungainly when he walked. Shoes were a problem too. He had to have them custom made. The last pair made for him were size 40.
I wear the largest pair of shoes ever made. When I kick somebody, they stay kicked.
In Alton, Wallow was well-liked and treated with respect. But elsewhere, he was the object of unwanted attention.
He couldn't go anywhere without being stared at and drawing a crowd. Some people wouldn't bother him, because of his height. Well, they might come up behind him and pinch his leg or something else, or maybe even try to kick him, on the shins. Make sure he wasn't on stilts.
His sanctuary was home with his family. His younger brother Harold, the only remaining member of the family, always admired him.
He was the best big brother anybody could ever have. He was a good person. Quiet person. Loving, caring.
That was
Wallow
his brother.
never stopped growing. He was 8'4" when he graduated from high school. He then enrolled in college and joined community groups. The Masons had to have a special chair built for him. You get a true sense of Wallow's immense scale when an average-sized person sits in it. When he was 20 and 8.5 feet tall, Robert Wallow began doing promotional tours for the company that made his shoes. He may not have enjoyed fame, but he liked traveling and the perks of being on the road.
We did go out on double dates. We go to a theater, a nightclub, usually for dinner and dancing. We laughed, we giggled, we just had a wonderful time. Robert never took advantage of being a popular person and one that was in the limelight. He never used his popularity to take advantage of anyone.
He died in 1940 from a foot infection caused by a metal brace he wore to strengthen his ankles. 5,000 people attended his funeral. It took 12 men to carry his casket. Though Robert Wallow was only 22 when he died, this gentle giant led a giant life.
He led what I would call an accelerated type of life. He traveled more, saw more, met more people. Political life, sports figures, movie stars. He was more in his short life than what people do in 2 or 3 lifetimes.
The man Guinness currently lists as the tallest man is Haji Muhammad Alam Chana. This 7 foot 7 1/4 inch Pakistani died recently in a New York hospital. The tallest man in the world now is just measured North Korean Michael Ride, who is 7 feet 9 inches. A foot shorter than Robert Wallow, the basketball-playing Rye is said to be the object of great interest in the NBA.
All right. So, see a little bit there about him. Tallest man currently is 8 foot 3 inches tall. It's from Turkey, Sultan Kosan. So, let's talk about some other endocrine organs. The pancreas is an important organ. The pancreas is an organ that releases a hormone called insulin. And I'm sure probably many of you have heard of insulin. What does it help to control? Luke?
Sugar levels.
Yeah, it controls blood sugar levels. In our body, it's important that we have the proper amount of glucose in our blood. If we have too little, our cells don't get enough energy, and that's bad. If we have too much, that's bad. Bad for our kidneys, bad for your nerves, and so forth. So our body has ways of regulating our blood sugar, and the pancreas is responsible for that. So the way the pancreas works, it's like the thermostat. Instead of keeping track of the temperature, though, it keeps track of blood sugar levels. So let's say this morning for breakfast you had 2 Pop-Tarts and a big bowl of Fruity Pebbles. Lots of sugary stuff. As the sugar from those foods makes its way into your blood sugar level starts to rise. Okay? Your pancreas is keeping track. And so once your pancreas senses elevated blood sugar, it turns on and starts producing insulin. It sends this insulin into your blood. And insulin circulates around your body in your blood. And what it does when it comes into contact with certain tissues, like your liver, it gives them a signal. It tells your liver, hey, too much sugar in the blood, you need to take some out and store it away. And that's what happens. Your liver takes glucose out of your blood, stores it, and then your blood sugar level starts to drop. Your pancreas keeps track. Once it finds the blood sugar is back in the proper level, it turns off, stops producing insulin, and then sort of waits. So your blood sugar rises again, and then this whole process can continue. Now there's other hormone that does the opposite. So a hormone called glucagon, which if your blood sugar drops too low, glucagon turns on, and that increases your blood sugar and does the opposite. So the pancreas monitors and keeps it right at the proper level. Now you probably know that some people, their pancreas does not function properly. Their body doesn't respond to insulin, or they don't produce insulin. What do we call that? Ava? Yeah, diabetes. And so maybe you know somebody that has diabetes. How do they take care of their blood sugar then if their pancreas is not doing it? Their pancreas cannot maintain homeostasis. What kind of things do they do? John?
They have to inject themselves with insulin.
Yeah, so their pancreas doesn't make insulin, so they have to give themselves insulin. How do they know when to give themselves insulin, Claudia? Yeah, they test their blood sugar. They poke themselves with a little needle. They take a little drop of blood, put it on a strip, put it in a little blood glucose meter, and it tells them how much glucose is in their blood. If they see it's above what it should be, then they have to give themselves some insulin. Okay? Just like, and so insulin will have the same effects, but they have to give it to themselves. Some people inject themselves with insulin. Some people have an insulin pump that they wear and has a little tube that goes and gives them insulin. Some people have like a pod they wear on their arm. There's even an insulin inhaler that a person can use. So there's lots of ways of getting that insulin into your body. But you have to monitor your blood sugar, take insulin when necessary, maybe eat extra sugar. If your blood sugar has gone too low, you might have something that contains some sugar in it. But you have to monitor your own blood sugar because your pancreas is not doing it. A few more glands. Your adrenal glands. Adrenal glands, they sit on top of your, they're like two little hats on your kidneys. Okay, that's what the name actually means. Adrenal, adrenal means near your kidneys. And they produce a stress hormone called adrenaline. I'm sure you've heard of adrenaline. When would you be experiencing the effects of adrenaline in your body? Jordan?
Like whenever something good happens, like happy.
Sometimes.
Maybe something.
Yeah. When there's something scares you, okay, something is exciting. Adrenaline is a hormone that is getting you ready basically to either fight or run away. It's called your fight or flight response. And if you've ever been, somebody, a friend or a brother or sister, like scared you really badly, like hid in the closet and then jumped out and screamed, what happens, you feel weird, right? What kind of things happen? You breathe heavier, your heart starts racing, you get sweaty, okay? Your body mobilizes extra energy, you might feel jittery, okay, after that. All of those things are basically an adaptation because if you have predators that are going to attack you, adrenaline gets you ready to fight those predators off or run away as fast as possible. That's called the fight or flight response. Your thyroid gland is a gland in your neck. It looks like a bow tie around your trachea. It produces hormones that help regulate your body's metabolism, how you use energy. And sometimes people have thyroid disorders where their body doesn't produce enough of these thyroid hormones. Okay? Some people produce too much of these thyroid hormones. It's called hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. Then the two last endocrine glands provide reproductive functions as well as endocrine functions. They're the testes in males, ovaries in females. We call them both. They're gonads is the general term for these. So in males, testes produce sperm cells, okay, for reproduction, but also a hormone called testosterone. Testosterone is known as the male sex hormone. Produced in the testes. And it's responsible for the development of what we call secondary male sex characteristics. And secondary male sex characteristics are things that happen during puberty, things like a deepened voice, an increase in body hair, an increase in muscle mass. Those physical effects are due to the testes producing higher levels of testosterone as a person gets older, as a boy gets older. At the same time in females, and also testosterone is also what people sometimes inject as a steroid. Okay? Because one of the effects of the hormone is an increase in muscle mass. Okay? And some people artificially inject themselves with testosterone to grow larger muscles. There's also a whole bunch of negative effects that go along with that are dangerous and bad for your health as well. In females, the equivalent to testes in females are ovaries. They produce, also testes produce sperm. Ovaries produce eggs. And they release the female sex hormone, which is called estrogen. In a similar way to testosterone, estrogen is responsible for female secondary sex characteristics. Okay, things like less body hair, change in the pelvis after puberty, breast development. Those are things that are controlled by this hormone, estrogen. And males have estrogen still in their body, and females have testosterone still in their body, but they have them at different ratios. Males have more testosterone, females have more estrogen. All right, any questions about endocrine glands, endocrine system? Yes.